Hello everyone, it's Cassie and welcome back for another Miss Ink Stamps video. Today I'm going to be using the Magnolia Sympathy stamp set. I'm also going to be pairing it up with this Square Dance stencil. And I'm actually making two cards today, but I'm really only going to show you the process of this one. So I've got my stamps lined up inside of my MISTI. I've got the words thinking of you and the main image, and I'm going to ink these up with some VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink because I do want to heat emboss it. As the title said, we're going to be doing some distress ink watercoloring, which is a super fun, easy way to use those distress inks. And, that way you can also do some watercoloring at the process. So I'm going to stamp that a couple of times. And that VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink is a pigment ink, so it will pick up the embossing powder that I'm using. It's just a clear embossing powder. And then I'm going to heat set that till that is smooth and melted. You could completely skip the step of using the embossing powder because the VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink is a pigment ink and it is waterproof. You could use it just fine without heat embossing it, but I like to do that because it makes it for somebody like me a little bit easier to do that watercoloring and not have to worry so much about things bleeding into each other. I'm going to mask off the part where I have my stamped images, and I did use my glass mat to kind of line that up. That is just some Heffy tape. It is like a post-it tape, and I can use this because I'm not going too crazy heavy with the medium that I'm using, which is some Distress spray stains. That first one was some milled lavender, and it's hard to see it there. I do like the splattery bits we have. It's just a very light purple. It's beautiful, and I'm going to stick my stencil right over the top of that, and then I'm going to spray this with some Tattered Rose. And it's going to be nice and subtle, very pretty for what we're going for here. And then I'll peel this away, and then that will be beautifully masked. So I do have some Distress ink cubes over there. We've got our milled lavender, and I am going to start off by doing a little bit of ink blending on the edges. Everything is nice and dry, so I can do this. And I'm just going to blend very, very lightly some of that milled lavender just on the edges where I've got my Tattered Rose and my milled lavender. And so it'll just make that purple pop a little bit more, but I really love the subtleness of that. And you'll see I'm coloring on a different card here because I didn't get the video of making this card, just the coloring, and I didn't get the coloring of the other card, just the making of the whole process. So I have my ink cubes. What I did is I stamped those on my glass mat, and I'm picking up my color with this Ranger watercolor brush, and I put a little bit of that color down. I obviously didn't mention, but I am using watercolor paper, and it's just a watercolor paper. I've got it linked and listed down below. But I'm putting down a little bit of that color, and I'm blending that out. I started off with the Tattered Rose, and then once I have that blended out enough, I want it to mostly be white. I'm going to pop in a tiny bit of that milled lavender in there, and that'll just add kind of that purplish tinge to our Tattered Rose. I think that looks so, so pretty, and we're going to do that for all of our buds. For our branch, we're coloring that with some tea dye, and again, just using the ink cube, I smashed that onto my glass mat, and again, picking that up with that watercolor brush. And then I decide I want to outline the entire image, and I'm going to do that with some hickory smoke. And I've watered it down a lot because I wanted it to be very, very subtle. I didn't want that gray to be too much because this is a very soft card anyway. You know, just all the colors are nice and soft. The blending is nice and soft. The spray and splatter is all nice and soft. It just all goes together. So I am just putting down a tiny bit of color and then dragging that out. I just want my Magnolia to pop on that background just enough, and I can do that by using that hickory smoke. It adds a little bit of a shadow behind our image, which is what we were going for. And I do this on that other card that you see me finish, but this is one card, and then here's the other. And that background that I used, in case you were curious, is the Ins and Outs Hollywood. So I do want to do a little splatter, but I kind of want to avoid my image I just colored. So I've brought in that milled lavender again, covered it up, and just kind of added a tiny bit of splatter around it. And I do it for the other card as well. We're going to heat set that, make sure that everything is nice and dry. And then we can adhere this down to our card front, which is just an A2 sized card front, or card. And that measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 when it's all closed up. I'll use a little bit of liquid glue to adhere this down to the front of our card base, And then that's actually going to finish off both of our cards. I don't add any more embellishments. These are nice, soft, subtle cards, and I do love how they turned out. So if you like this video, be sure to hit that like button and definitely consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. And I really do appreciate you watching. It means so much to me. Have a great day, and I'll see you soon.